All right. Hello and welcome to the first mock draft of this 23-24 fantasy season. Right now, we've got a bunch of the guys from the Patreon group, the Discord server, all populating this, so there's no bots in this at all. Just looking at the categories: goals, assists, plus minus, power play points, shots on goal, hits, goaltending is wins, goals against, save percentage, shutouts, pretty standard there. The only difference I would make if I were setting this up would be taking out plus minus, because you pretty much cut the amount of fantasy relevant players in half, because you really don't want anybody on the terrible teams that are going to have awful plus minus, even though they're great players. Guys like Clayton Keller would be, guys that you wouldn't necessarily want because the plus minus would kill you or whatever, but that's what we're working with right now. So we're loading up the server right now for the the mock draft. Let's take a look at some of these. I haven't even looked at any of these. I haven't done this yet. A couple of our Patreon guys have done a couple of mocks already, and they're saying that the rankings are kind of crazy all over the place. So we'll take a look at this really quickly. I just randomly drafted fifth. This is typically, I like the front and the back end of the snake, so it's interesting to try to pick right in the middle. Not usually a place that I like to draft from, so we'll see what happens with this. But as we have about a minute and a half until the draft starts, let's look at some of the rankings here. So these are projected stats. I almost never use these, just because, I don't know what goes into them. What's the calculus behind the projections? It's not really, it could be anything. They could be, taking averages and projecting out from that. It doesn't, it doesn't make sense to me to use that. So I'm going to use the total stats from 22-23 because I've been working with that data for a while. I wonder if you can, I don't think you can get rid of this bottom thing right here. I would like a little bit more real estate to work with. I'm not going to hide picks. You can see all those. So obviously McDavid, number one. Let's see. So these are the rankings. I don't know why Draisaitl's down there. That makes no sense. He should be number two. McDavid should always be your number one pick. Draisaitl should always be your number two pick. He was 1.6 points per game last year. And there's pretty much nobody like him. He was dual eligible last year, and I know that this year they've kind of tamped down on the dual eligibility a lot. I have somebody of the lack of dual eligibility, the changes that were made for this season about dual eligibility, and it's pretty interesting how many guys lost it. And I'm assuming Draisaitl is one of those because he used to be a center left wing. So that is something that you're going to have to monitor going forward. But let's take a look. The draft's starting, so we got a couple people. Obviously, McDavid's going to go first. By the time I pick, I'm probably picking between one of these guys. Now, yeah, McDavid just goes right off the board right there. So nothing crazy going on there. Draisaitl goes second, which is expected. And then we get Pastrnak at third, which is a little bit of a bold choice considering everything that went on with Boston this season. But I do think that he's pretty safe. I'm not going to overthink it. I'm just going to go ahead and grab Austin Matthews. Last year was a down year for him, and he was, I believe, he was the number one rated fantasy player on my rankings. So he's much more complete than he used to be, and it was a down year. He only had 40 goals. So I'll take Matthews all day at the fifth spot, and Rantanen goes next. That's pretty safe, I guess. You got McKinnon fourth, Rantanen sixth. It's interesting to see that Jack Hughes is up here. You know what? I'm going to turn back the projected stats just to see what this is going to look like. These are the rankings. I don't know what comp exp rank means, but we'll go by this rank. It's interesting for me to be in here and just kind of play around with this stuff, because you never know what other people are using. If they're going by this ranking or that ranking, you're going to want to know that so that you can kind of target guys that are, what you're looking for in the right spots. Okay, so Robertson, Tkachuk, and Kucherov, 7, 8, and 9. Nothing crazy there. Kucherov at 9 is actually, I think, a value pick. He's a 1.4 point per game type of player. Just bringing up his stats right now. I have, typically when I do this, and I can't share two screens at once, it will just get a little bit cluttered while you're watching it. But right now I have the Player Hub open, which I just updated with a bunch of filtering options with rankings on there. So I'm pulling that up. Kucherov is a 1.38 point per game guy last year, 99th percentile in points per game, 100th in assists, and 100th in power play points, 0.61. That's basically double what most other guys get. So he's still elite. He's still a power play dynamic player that you're going to want. Kachuk goes 10th. Jack Hughes goes 11th, and that's a really smart pick. But Cale Makar going 12th. Last year, he was going like 4th. So he did drop a little bit just because of the fact he was injured last year, but Isaiah gets a nice pick there at 12th. Kaprizov at 13th. That's a really good pick. This year we're seeing a lot more depth within the first 2 rounds. There's guys that you never thought you'd be able to get in this range. Kaprizov was a top 6 or 7 pick last year. You get Marner at 14th, Tage Thompson at 15th, which is interesting as well. There's some good talent on the board still. And here's the interesting part. A bunch of goalies coming up in the queue. And I wouldn't take, all Sorokin, Shesterkin, Ottinger, those are all excellent picks for goaltending. I'm going to be fading Ullmark just because of the fact that it's, what happened last year is a one-off in my opinion. He might be really good again, and you might want that tandem, but I'm not picking him anywhere near the second round, so that's just not part of the data draft strategy. We get Pettersson at 16th. I think that's good value there. Panarin at 17th, I think, is a reach. The more I've looked into his file, the less complete it is. He was, I just filtered by point per game players. He was the second lowest rated point per game player because he doesn't do any hitting or shot blocking, and he's pretty much an assist and power play heavy guy. So Timo Meier is actually a stat stuffer right there. I'm going to go, so I do typically want a defenseman in this range, but I'm running out of time. I might get him next time. You could get Stützle here. I'm going to do it. Didn't have a ton of time to think about that because I was talking, but Tim Stützle is one of the best players. What's up, buddy? That's cool. Okay, we'll go to bed soon. That's my son. So Ovechkin and Stützle, if you want to take left wingers, there's a couple of guys. Timo Meier and Ovechkin are 2 of the best because they get goals, production, shots, hits, everything. They cover everything, but so does Stützle. As I'm looking at my rankings, he was the 6th most complete player last year. And he was a really good player before last year. And then last year, he kind of added in some other elements like hitting. He's 1.46 hits per game last year, 96th percentile power play, 97th assists, 97th in goals, 98th in points, 1.15 points per game. So I do really like Timmy Stützle there. Ovechkin and Crosby. Crosby is a 2nd round pick. That's a really good value pick right there. Sorokin at 23. That's right around the spot where I would start targeting goalies if you really want one. I wouldn't get a goalie before this range, but that's right around the range, and he's the best goalie available. So that isn't a bad pick by any stretch. Yossi is still a really complete defenseman. He might get overlooked in some mock drafts, but we have some pretty astute players here, so they're going to take Yossi in that spot. And now I'm up again, and I'm talking, so I'm not even paying attention. I need a defenseman. And I do still like Victor Hedman. Out of these guys, the power play time is a question mark, but I do think I'm just going to go for Hedman because I need a defenseman. The question with him is it Hedman or is it Sergachev on that power play? If you believe it's Hedman because it's always been Hedman, then you get a good value pick here. So strategy-wise, what I've done here, best player available with the first pick. You want a high point per game player, goal scorer preferably if you can, with some shot volume. Obviously, Matthews ticks all those boxes. Obviously, you're looking at one of the best offensive goal scoring players in modern history. He gets 4.42 shots per game, over half a goal per game last year when he was in a down season, so to speak. He was injured from time to time. And if you look at his 5-year rating trend, it's still trending in the right direction. He's still improving as he added blocks last year. So 1.24 blocks per game. So best player available with all of that point ceiling and goal ceiling, etc. Stützle is very complete as well, getting another best player available. But then I come in with the defenseman. You need those 2 elite defensemen in the first 6 rounds. That's what I've been saying for the last year and a half or so, or a little bit over a year. But now I do need to think about a goaltender. Q one up. Obviously, we're going to like Jake Ottinger. Georgiev's good for the team exposure. Hellebuck's a little bit more consistent. I like Philip Gustafson. I don't know about a G1, though, just because of the start volume. So I'm going to switch it over to the goalie hub on my other page real quick. You obviously can't see this. I wish you could. But if you want to get access to the player or goalie hubs, you can go to the Patreon link in the description below and play around with it yourself. There's a ton of tools on the Patreon link that I can share with you in the description below. But so obviously from last year, Allmark was ranked number 1, Ottinger was number 2, so he's going to be my target. If he gets sniped in the next couple picks, it's not the end of the world. There are a couple of other good options. Georgiev was 3rd in my rankings at an 87. Ottinger was 2nd at a 91. Allmark 1st with a 92. So this is factoring in wins, start volume, so games played percentile, I guess, win percentile, goals against, save percentage. You're looking at goals saved above expected and team expected goals against per game to give you a sense of how good the team is in front of them. So if you can, if you want to access the goaltending hub, that's what you're going to get, and it's going to give you a better complete picture of what the goaltender has to work with in terms of his team and what he's going to be able to do. So here we get Eichel and McAvoy. John Carlson, my boy, goes here. Kyle Connor, I usually like drafting him. I'm going to be drafting Ottinger so I can review some of these picks. Braden Point, that's pretty good for a 50-goal guy going at 38. Barkov, that's probably where he should go because he is a little bit overrated in fantasy. JT Miller is incredibly complete and consistent. And you see here what we've all been wondering. How high is Evan Bouchard going to go? 35th. And Vasilevsky's 34th. That's extremely good value for Vasilevsky. I don't like him if you're getting him in the first round, but if you're getting him at 34 or wherever he went, that's really good value. So Saros was one of the first goaltenders off the board. Sorokin, I think, is the first guy, then Saros. Zibanejad at 31. Fox, a little bit early for Fox. I would probably have taken Carlson over him just because of some of the peripherals, goal scoring, shots, etc. Vasilevsky's great pick there at 34. Bouchard is the interesting case file because if you look at his hub, he's not that great. He's okay, but he's improving, and he just got the power play 1 position from Tyson Barrie when they moved him out. So that'll be an interesting case study to see where he goes. Now, strategy-wise, I got a couple picks left, and then I'm going, so I got to think about what I'm doing next. I've got the center, I've got the left wing, I've got a defenseman and a goalie. Let's try to go for a right wing, but best player available will probably be something that I have to look at as well. Scroll it up here. Not a lot to work with. I do like Tuck. DeBrinket's another good player. Giroux might be the best available. But I think there's some value in some guys deeper down here. It's hard to tell. There's some higher upside guys further down. I don't know if I'm going to go for a right winger right now because I'm picking in 7 or 8 picks after this. So let's see what we got here. It's hard not to take Brad Marchand. I know the narrative in Boston, but getting him in this range at 53 is not a bad idea either. We do need another defenseman. And I have 7 seconds to make this pick. I'll do Cider. Probably reached on Cider a little bit there, but this is not a bad range for him. He was a 4th round pick last year, and he held up his value by the end of the year. So getting him at 53 in my 5th round, that's not bad. And he's very good at covering categories. I don't know about I'm looking it up right now, but I think he's a good shot blocker, good hitter. He's going to be on power play 1 unless they just hand that over to Gostisbehere, which is the concern with picking Cider. Sergachev, Bobrovsky going better than Kane because of the peripherals. Stamkos at 48 is a great pick. Tavares is a great pick at 47. Svechnikov is a nice high upside play there. So there's some value to be had in this range. Sebastian Aho, he's a point per game player every single year, and you're getting him at 57. So that's a really good pick. I do probably want to think, Kreider's still available. I might throw him on the queue. Rope Hintz is still available. I like Gustafsson. Just have some guys lined up. I usually don't fill up my queue because I kind of like to, I'm obviously talking, so I don't have time to do that. And then I like to be a little bit more malleable and go with the flow and try to see what other people are doing and not have guys lined up necessarily. Plus, it's hard when you're picking every couple of picks. It's easier when you're at the front or the back of the snake. So somebody must have heard me and taken Kreider. Yeah, Isaiah might be watching the live stream. He's a Patreon member, and I don't know if he knows that I'm really high on Kreider this year, but I am. Morrissey's a really great defenseman. He goes back-to-back, Kreider and Morrissey, and Gustafsson gets taken out from under me right there. So these guys got to be watching the live stream right now, or they just know me too well. Brandon Montour, that's a decent play as long as he's healthy. Same with Gensel. This is a good spot to get these guys. You don't want to reach for them. They're good players, but they're going to miss a little bit of time. Gensel might not miss as much as Montour. Who knows? Last year, the narrative, Charlie McAvoy, Brad Marchand, they were kind of taboo. They dropped to like the 8th or 9th round, and then they were healthier quicker than people thought. So it was actually a really nice play. Adrian Kempe, he's a guy that's going to show up in the next video that I'm prepping right now for the second half players. So the best players in the second half last year, he was definitely one of them. So you definitely want to watch that video to see who the guys were that were hot at the end of the year. Now, I don't need a goalie next, but Hellebuck is still there, and that would be a hell of a tandem. And I pretty much wouldn't need a third goalie if I did that, because those two guys are going to get me enough starts every week. I shouldn't do it, but I might, because I don't really do like Trocheck for peripheral coverage. Like Lindholm on a bounce back. Eriksson Ek is extremely valuable. It's just hard to turn down Hellebuck. We're going to go with the 2 goalie strategy. I'm not going to pick another goalie the rest of the way, maybe at the absolute tail end. So now, strategy-wise, I've kind of deviated from what I usually like to do, but best player available, I got a center, I got a left winger in Stützle, 2 elite defensemen, and this is the 6th round, so everything, that 2 elite defensemen by the end of the 6th round is when I like to have those guys. And then I've got 2 goalies. I usually don't do this. I usually pick a goalie in the 4th or 5th round and then another one in the 9th, 10th, 11th round, because there is so much value in goaltending later. Tuck at 70 and DeBrincat at 69 are excellent picks there. I probably should have done that. I probably also need to think about a right winger right now because I have none, and there's not that many of them that are terribly highly rated. So of the guys that are left, I don't see Pavelski. I guess he went earlier. Stone's a nice pick if he's healthy. I do like Cole Caulfield. Man, Kakko is way too high. I guess we're just getting into the bottom of the barrel really quick with the right winger, so it might be a strategy to pick one soon. Marchessault is actually a really good pick for a number of different categories, shots, goals, etc. Just don't know how complete he is. Tuck, Tippett. Tippett's still here. He is. Of these guys that I have queued up, Tippett is actually probably the highest rated, but Caulfield is 95th percentile in goals and shots, and he was injured last year. A lot of guys are forgetting about him. I'm probably just going to go and take him right now. Tippett is a really interesting guy. I'm definitely keeping him in the queue. I do like Mark Stone. Huberdeau at 73 is massive value. If you can do Huberdeau at 73, Werenski at 72, Giroux at 71, that's great value. Tuck, all of these guys are really good picks. Rupe Hintz at 67, Larkin at 66. Last year, I got Larkin after the draft ended. I picked him up off waivers. So this is a massive, I don't know why he dropped that much. Vince Dunn, Darnell Nurse, Marchessault. Again, we got some very intelligent fantasy hockey managers in this, guys that are in the Patreon group. Tyson Barrie's a little off the board. I'm guessing people are thinking he might quarterback that power play in Nashville, but that's Roman Yossi's spot, so I wouldn't even touch Tyson Barrie at this point. That's just a personal taste. He's a power play specialist, and for me, it's Yossi's to lose. And I think the world of Yossi, so I do think that he would be kind of a better play there, but Pavelski is available. He's just not a right winger anymore. That's disappointing because he's still really productive. Throw him on there. Heischer's another good pick. Look up his file while we're at it. If you're going to stack, you might as well stack from teams like that. Point per game last year, basically 0.99. 93rd percentile in goals, 95th in assists, 96th in shots. That's a little bit news to me. 86th in power play, no hits, and a couple of blocks. So he's trending in the right direction over the last 3 seasons. Nichushkin going this late is interesting. If you saw the social media rounds today, Nichushkin, nice picture. I don't know what kind of gun that was, but yeah, that was interesting. I don't know what he's thinking or what's going through his mind. I would be trying to, be on my best behavior after what happened in the playoffs. Verhaeghe at 86 is massive. That's a huge play. He was a left wing last year, so I don't know what they're doing with this center delineation or whatever you want to call it, but he's a really good goal scorer. Levi, that to me, that's a reach at 87. Buffalo's not known to be a great defensive team, and he's a very young and unproven goalie. But people have different strategies. They're doing things differently, and that's what opens up opportunities for us here. I got a couple guys I like in the queue. I don't need a goalie anymore. I could maybe queue up a defenseman. Maybe change the order around a little bit, just judging by rank. Philip Forsberg at 91. Oh. I do wish I had some more time to make these picks, just to think about it a little bit more. I do like Skinner. I do like Buchnevich. All right, so I froze and I tried to pick Trocheck, but it went to Pavelski, and I don't really care. Both of them are good players. In this league format, I don't know if it matters as much, but in my league format that I play with hits and blocks, Trocheck is a monster. He was doing a little bit of everything. He wasn't quite as offensively prolific as you would have thought or hoped playing with Panarin. But just because it didn't click last year doesn't mean it's not going to work out this year. And he hits everything that moves. He shoots a ton. So Matthews, Pavelski, Stützle, Caulfield, high upside guys. Hedman, Seider, some peripheral coverage there from Seider. Forgot to look him up to give you guys that info. Yeah, 99th percentile for blocks, 2.3 blocks per game, 2.5 hits per game for Seider. So that's the floor that you're getting him at. And then the offensive production, he was half a point per game. Goals weren't really there. Assists were pretty good at 84th percentile. Shots weren't crazy high. And there was some power play production, but 0.18 power play points per game is not crazy. So he's got a really good floor because of the hits and blocks. Obviously, in this what we're doing right now, blocks are not a part of it, so I would maybe revise that a little bit. Some of these left wingers are really good. If you need a goalie, Freddie Anderson. I really don't see how you could go wrong with Freddie Anderson or the tandem in Carolina. They're one of the best defensive teams in the league, and nothing's changing. Connor Bedard going 97th. Markstrom at 99, but Bedard at 97 is interesting. Stone gets taken, Markstrom, and Malkin. Of these guys, I think I'm going to go with Buchnevich. Can I look him up in time? Nope. So I'm just going to do it. People don't really realize how good Buchnevich was last year. At one point, he was top 10 in league scoring, and he got injured. I'm trying to pull up his file right now because 97th in points per game, 1.06, 95th in assists, 94th in power play points, a 74 overall. So, a guy, I had him at skater rank 102. I pick him at 101. That's right around where you'd like to get him. Skinner's a good pick here as well. He's a very high shot volume guy, goal scoring production. I do want Jared McCann if he's available. He's another goal scorer with shot volume. One of the best per 60 goal scorers in the league right now. Oh, man. Nick Ehlers. This low. Logan Thompson. If you're looking for a goalie, I mean, how do you go wrong with Vegas's defense in front of him? I do think it's a nice bounce back year for Naz Kadri. Shifley goes at 104. That's interesting as well. There's a ton of talent to be found even this late in the draft, so that's good news. Ekblad, I'm off the Ekblad train now because I had him last year, but he was still pretty solid. He just didn't meet my expectations from where I drafted him last year. Sam Bennett is an interesting pick up here. Aiden Hill's available here, so there's a bunch of guys. You want the hits, Jacob Trouba's available. We might do that as a D3. Morgan Riley is still here. Tom Wilson is still here. Brandon Hagel just signed that massive deal, and a lot of people don't know why. Him, Point, and Kucherov, for a big chunk of the early part of the season last year, were one of the best, if not the best lines in hockey. And that chemistry is only going to grow. He had about 60 points last year, if I'm not mistaken. And I think the sky's the limit if he's playing with those two guys. Lehkonen this late is interesting. Seth Jarvis, if you like that type of player. I didn't like him last year because he was getting overdrafted, but if he's this low, it's not a bad idea at all. I gotta have Patrick Laine on the queue. He was one of the best second half players, just spoiler alert for the next video. Tyler Bertuzzi, people must not be looking there. Gudis, my boy. Chris Letang still available. I mean, just a ton of guys. I'm not even going to look any further. I'm just going to work off my queue now. Riley's gone. Troy Terry, Kuzmenko, Doughty, Bratt, Boldy. Patrick Kane going a little bit early just considering he doesn't have a team right now. But, you know, if you would have said to somebody 2 years ago that Patrick Kane was going to go 105, they would not have believed you. He's a top 2 round player if you want to go that route. Letang at 113 is good value. Wilson, McCann. So all the guys in my queue are getting taken by the people probably watching this live stream. So there's a bunch of talent here. I think of these guys, the one that I'm interested in the most is Nick Ehlers. But I already have 2 left wings, so that doesn't help. But I had him last year. He was on IR for a little bit, and he was a little bit underwhelming. But if I've looked at his data in the past and what he's been able to do. He was almost a 4-shot per game guy with a bunch of other categories coverage going on. That was 2 years ago by now. But even last year, he's been on the slight downward trend over the last 3 years, but in that same 70 to 73 range. 91st percentile in point per game, 93rd in assists, 92nd in shots, 89th in power play. So I'll take that all day. Bertuzzi is still a nice pick here. I do have the option to get Trocheck for a 3rd center, but I've already got 2. I might go right wing or 3rd D here. So that would mean Owen Tippett. Who do we have for right wings? Card Raquel is a very underrated player. I'm going to throw him on the wire. I love Zuccarello as a player. I don't know how much I love him just because he's assist heavy in fantasy, but I do like that player. Who do I like more? Raquel or Tippett? Tippett is the 10th ranked right winger on my rankings. And I'm not going to overthink that. And the reason he's so highly rated, if this will load, is he kind of covered a little bit of everything last year, and he's very under the radar. People didn't really notice. 91st percentile in goals, 93rd in shots, 3 shots per game. Got some power play production, not a ton. 1.6 hits per game, almost a block per game, 0.9. And that was in his, I think, technically 3rd season, but really probably his 2nd full season, or maybe his 1st full season. He got a couple cups of coffee in 2021 and 21-22. So now guys are taking up that full 20 whatever seconds we get. I do need another defenseman on here. I like Gudis, but as a D4. Noah Dobson's a power play quarterback. I could go Ekblad here. It's not a terrible pick. Luke Shen for blocks, but we're not playing blocks right now. I do like Thomas Shabbat. Here goes Korpisalo. So Zook and Raquel go here. Uyghur's a nice upside play. You know, didn't have a great year last year, but I think all of Calgary is going to get a bump in their production this year. Owen Byram. Jake Sanderson. Owen Power's not bad. I do like Mike Matheson. This is one of those guys on a bad team. He was the 10th or 11th best defenseman last year in on my ranking system. He's very complete. Once he was healthy at the back end of the year, he only played like 40-something games, but he was really good down the stretch. I actually used him over Ekblad in my, I think, championship week because he was actually better. And yes, he was the 11th best defenseman on my rankings last year for completeness. If you're new to the Player Hub and the rankings that I have, they're all about completeness, how much they cover all of the categories listed. This draft is using plus minus instead of blocks, but that's just kind of not important because we're not actually playing this out. But Matheson's got a 4-year upward trend, 54, 58, 64, and then a 79. So he could be due for a little bit of regression, but there's nobody pushing him in Montreal. He's going to get the power play time. Excellent skater. 92nd percentile in blocks, 1.1 hits per game, 89th percentile in shots, 92nd in assists, 85th in points, 81st percentile in power play points. So pretty underrated. And sometimes you have to look at those guys. If you're looking at defensemen, especially the top, like the first 3 defensemen you pick, they should be quarterbacking a power play. So in theory, Seider should be quarterbacking a power play. Hedman should. But if you don't believe that these two guys are going to definitely be on the power play, my next pick should be a defenseman who's absolutely quarterbacking a power play, which would be Shabbat or Matheson. And of those two, I think Shabbat is the play. Shabbat was ranked 13th on my rankings, so not a crazy amount different from Matheson, but he does have a lot more to work with. And he's very consistent over the last 3 years, 79, 79, 78. 94th percentile in blocks, 1.1 hits per game, 92nd in power play points. So I might go Shabbat if he's available, though I just did all that about Matheson. Bowen Byram is a really good defenseman as well. He's just not going to be the power play quarterback, which is obviously going to bring down his value. Gudis gets sniped by Kyle here. All these guys know that I love Gudis, so they just snipe him from me. But honestly, Gudis, I think I picked Gudis in the 90 to 100 range in my actual draft last year because he's such a good hitter. So if you want hits specifically, now I have Seider for hits and blocks, so I don't necessarily need a guy just for hits. I did kind of need a guy who was just going to quarterback a power play because these two are kind of questionable whether or not they will for the entire season. Matthews, Pavelski, Stützle, Buchnevich, Caulfield, Tippett, Hedman, Seider, Shabbat, Ottinger, Hellebuck, with Ehlers on the bench. Looking at D, Krug's not bad. I don't know if I saw Falk. Falk is actually really underrated. Nobody liked St. Louis last year. Hronek is another guy, and I do want to look that up because I had my eye on him last year when he came back from his injury. He just got traded to Vancouver. He was injured, so he didn't really play for Vancouver, and nobody remembers that he was actually a pretty good defenseman for Detroit in terms of certain fantasy categories. 88th percentile in power play points, 1.59 hits per game, 0.91 blocks per game. So some peripherals, some power play coverage, assists as well for Hronek. Sanderson is obviously a guy that is going to get some attention because of how good he is and how young he is. Jeff Petrie is really underrated as well. I think Detroit's blue line is going to be underrated this year. So for goaltending, Kochetkov is really good. He's just a third string. I wouldn't mind taking him here, though, because he's that good when he's in. Eriksson Ek in this range is crazy value. He's very complete. Just going to look at all of the players here. Marty Necas is not a bad idea. Sam Reinhart's not a bad idea. Kopitar. I'm going to go Reinhardt. So Sam Reinhardt last year, he's again going to be featured on that second half, the best second half players of last year. He improved a lot in the second half, got a little bit more playing time, and on top of all that, they're dealing with a bunch of injuries. So his power play time at the beginning of the season is going to be probably higher than what it might be later in the season. And if you can get a guy that gets really hot early and you know things might fade off a little bit, you can get his trade value up really high and trade him within the first month or two of the season and cash that out for a guy that you might have not been able to draft in this range. So last year I did that. I got 3 guys that were really hot and I traded them for UC Saros because I had goaltending trouble. And that was huge. That helped win my championship. So that could be a strategy if you're looking at it. Kadri is a nice pickup here. Carter Hart, I liked him last year. He had a really good month of October and then kind of faded off. Obviously, they're not the best defensive team. I don't like to own goalies that aren't on good defensive teams. But if you're looking for high upside, I wouldn't mind that at all. Did Demko go? I kind of missed that. Yeah, he went. And I don't know where until at the end, but he is gone. I do think it's a nice bounce back for him this season. Luke Hughes going 143. And this is the thing with rookies that I don't particularly care for them because there's just no way to know. You have no data to back it up to see, oh, he's done this or that in the past. And, what's the ice time going to look like? He could be top pair. He could be third pair. You don't know because they've kind of mixed their blue line up in the offseason. So there's a lot of question marks, but you're not taking a huge risk in this range. So it's not a bad play, especially if you're banking on upside. Obviously, if you're in a keeper league, he goes earlier than this. There are still some really good players on the board. I've got a couple of them in my queue, but let's add a couple more. Clear some of these filters on the player hub. Matty Beniers still available. Ronta and Thompson. Sam Bennett. There's a couple of guys. I mean, this is where you're getting into that range of some question marks. Nick Suzuki's still available. And I just picked a center, so I don't need him. But that's not a bad idea. But in this, we are factoring in plus minus, so maybe not the best idea in that case. Oh, Lafreniere. I'll just pick him. He's a great fantasy player. You can hear the pain in my voice. I'm just going to take Bertuzzi. Even though I have 3 left wings already, I think he's the best player available just situationally based. But yeah, there is a bunch of pain in my voice talking about Lafreniere. Lehkonen at 158 is a huge value play. Sanderson, I like a lot of these guys in this range. So, I mean, just looking at this and getting my overall take on the depth of this year's fantasy draft. These are all very intelligent fantasy players. They're all in the Discord group, the Patreon group. And so they know what they're looking for. And if you're playing with people that don't know what they're looking for, there's going to be even better players than this in this range. And I still like the guys that are in this range. So there's a lot of depth here. I do need a 4th defenseman and probably another right wing. And I've only got 2 spots left, so that's what it's going to have to be. I don't mind Gallagher. Like, Gallagher a couple years ago was extremely complete because of his shot volume. Arvidsson, Smith, Eberle. Blake Wheeler here is not the worst idea I've ever had, but it's not the best either. I used to like Brian Rust. I've gone there. I went there last year. I didn't love what I got from him. Josh Anderson. Let's look at the last year's stats. So here, let's try to do this. Let's filter by goals, see who's the best. Niederreiter is actually a really complete player. That might not be a bad idea. He gets some hits as well, and their top 6 has changed in Winnipeg, so I might just throw him on the queue. Power play points, Blake Wheeler, but who knows if he's going to get that power play time. Oshie for some hits. He's just injured a lot. That's the only question mark with him. Jack Quinn is injured. Oh, I'll take Kravtsov. That's a good idea. And Kakko. Yeah, those are great ideas. Actually, if this was real hockey, I might take Kakko, but not this. Ville Husso this late is crazy value. I'm going to do Bowen Byram just because I know that he's a really good defenseman. So now I've got the 3 defensemen that I was looking for, or at least the 3 that I was looking for. So I've got Hedman, power play quarterback, all around really good defenseman. Sider, peripherals guy, hits and blocks as his floor. He could also quarterback a power play. Shabbat quarterbacking a power play that, probably is going to be elite level this year. There's no way to tell, but they have all the pieces to make that work. And then Bowen Byram is not necessarily a power play guy, but, last year when Cale Makar was injured, he was their best defenseman. So I'm not rooting for Cale Makar to get injured, but in the event that happens, Bowen Byram is a 75 on my ratings, and he's improved drastically from year 1 to year 2, and then went from a 28 to a 69, and then a 69 to a 74. 1.95 hits per game, 1.29 blocks per game. He does get some power play points, 75th percentile, 0.14 in power play points per game. 80th percentile in goals per game. So, to get a guy like that, that's not quarterbacking a power play, that's probably what you're going to hope for in terms of your D4, unless you want a strict hits guy. If I didn't have Sider, I probably would have gotten a strict hits guy. Maybe Luke Shen, if he's still available. Doubt he is. If we filter by hits and go to the top, he is available. So just in case you wanted that hits guy, Larson is a hits and blocks guy. Lausanne is a huge hitter. Akinpa, huge hitter. So if you know that you have hits in your league, these guys are going to go earlier than where they are now. Binnington, somebody's toying with me there. Suzuki at 183 is insane. Barzell at 181 is insane. Those are really good value picks here. And again, there's a bunch of talent down here. Zucker's going to be a top 6 guy in Arizona. Bennett at 186 is crazy. So here, I don't need another goalie. I would have gone Logan Thompson. Imagine that stack. Ottinger, Hellebuck, Thompson. But I don't need it because those 2 guys are going to get enough starts. I'll just throw in Niederreiter because I don't have any other right wingers. And that's going to do it. So let's see what the final picks are going to trickle in as. We'll take a look at the overview, and then that'll do it for this video. If you've watched to this point, then thank you. I know there's not really a whole lot going on in the fantasy world right now. I'm trying to put some videos out there just because it's taking me longer to make them now. But nonetheless, I want to give you guys the content you need for fantasy draft and for the fantasy season. This is my first mock of the season, so it was interesting to see where some of these guys are going. Anders Lee at 189 is insane, the amount of production that he used to put up. Obviously, there's not a lot of sexy in the Islanders players because they're not very good offensively, but he's a power play guy who's a goal scorer. You could do a lot worse. Tanner Jeannot's still here for some hits, and we're still filtering by hits here. Victor Olofsson, if you want to go that route. Boone Jenner is a really complete center, top 6 in a probably much improved Columbus offense. So that's a really, 214 shots, 129 hits. He's extremely complete. Just telling you from my rankings, I'll pull it up right now just to give you a sense of where he ranked in terms of centers. He's not listed as a center, which is why this is going to screw me up because he is listed as a center here. I think he was a left wing last year. Loading up. Boone Jenner, 32 overall on my rankings, and he's still available after 192. So Cam Talbot in LA, that's a really good team exposure play for Talbot. Nick Schmaltz is an underrated player going this late in the draft, so a lot going on here. Let's see if I can get to the other room. If I leave this, will this take me to that thing where you can see all of the picks? It's been a while, guys. Let's just do draft results. Draft board. So just recapping the first couple rounds. McDavid, Draisaitl, Pastrnak at 3, McKinnon, Matthews, Rantanen, Robertson. You know, people might think that's a little high for Robertson, but it's really not. Kachuk, Kucherov, Kachuk, Hughes, McCarr. I mean, there's elite players going all the way through until you get to Panarin. He is an elite player, but he's just not necessarily an elite fantasy player in terms of what he covers. He's very assist heavy and power play heavy, but he is still really good at those two things. So if you're looking for that. But then you got Pettersson, Thompson, Marner, Kaprizov, Miller. Oh no, going back this way. Sorry. So we're going down. Kaprizov, Marner, Thompson, Pettersson, Panarin, Meyer, Nylander, Stützle, Ovechkin. There's still incredible players. I can't really... Bouchard is the only guy that in this range looks like a reach. And it's not really if you know what you're getting, because you're getting the power play quarterback in Edmonton. Barkov might be a little bit of a reach here. Just a tiny bit. McAvoy might be a reach here just because he's not necessarily quarterbacking that power play. It could be Hampus Lindholm. McAvoy's very complete, very, peripheral based, hits, blocks, some shots, gets some power play points, etc. But could be a slight reach in this range because you're still looking at all of these good players. Stamkos going later than that. Ottinger, Eichel. Burns, that's a little early, I think, for him. Way too early for Bobrovsky, in my opinion. I don't think this is too early for Ullmark. I would have expected him to go a little bit sooner. I'm not necessarily going to draft him there. Keller going this early is a little bit surprising just because people are now, I guess, starting to realize that he's really good. So he had a really good season last year, over a point per game. Goes ahead of Brad Marchand. When did you think you were going to see that? Chris Kreider still available down here. Morrissey, Gustafsson in the 6th round is a huge play. If he's the G1 in Minnesota, that's massive value. He's probably not. He's probably the 1A, but he's one of the best goaltenders in the league. Top 5 in my goalie rankings. Kempe is a little bit early here. I think I would have taken Hintz, Hellebuck, a bunch of these guys before Kempe, but Kempe is one of those guys that we're going to talk about in the next video. Huberdeau's a huge value play here. I used to get Huberdeau and Kyle Connor in the 4th round before they took off, and that was incredible value. So to get Huberdeau in the 7th, and I think I just saw Kyle Connor. I did see him. I'm kind of losing it with the colors here, but anyways. Yeah, so a lot of the positional changes have taken effect, so there's not that many dual eligible guys. Maybe that's something that we can look at, is doing another one of these and just documenting the guys who are dual eligible and just giving you a straight list. That list could change before draft time, so maybe we'll do that closer to the draft, but there's still a ton of value in this draft. There's a bunch of guys going late. There's not a lot of mistakes being made in this draft, guys who really know what they're doing, and if you want to join the Data Draft Discord group, just click the Patreon link in the description below. It's $5 a month. It's not a crazy amount. And what you're going to get out of that, you're getting access to the player hub, the goalie hub, the visualizations I use on the channel, any of them that I throw up on there. There's a link to that in the Patreon subscription membership. And then you get access to the Discord group. We talk about all kinds of stuff. You get breaking news there, guys who are all, on top of it, guys who cover a specific team, teams I don't watch. We got some guys who follow the Canucks. I don't stay up late to watch the Canucks, obviously, with what's been going on there lately. So if you're, new to this, if you want some better resources, some guys who know what they're doing, who can help you make some roster decisions, you bounce some ideas off of them. You talk about strategy a little bit. There's resources available. Guys are always posting things that are helpful for them. If you want access to that, it's a Patreon link in the description below. If you just want the player hub and the goalie hub, specifically maybe for draft season, it also comes in handy during the season when you're trying to replace players and find a guy. Oh, I need, I'm a little light on shots this week. Let me find a guy who's good for shots. You have filters that you can use for that purpose. And just really quick, I will see if I can throw that up on the screen for you. So what we're going to do, I'll walk you through this just really quick. You can search by name over here. You can also use this to search players, but if somebody's selected here, you have to X that out to click over here. But if you want to search a player by point per game percentile, points per game, goals per game percentile, goals per game, etc., all the way down, any of these. And what you can do, let's say I want to find a guy who's a point per game player, and let's say he needs to be a left wing. You filter by point per game, you filter by position. This gives you the guys who are point per game players, left wingers, etc. You can find the guys who are most likely to be on the waiver wire by looking at the bottom of the screen. The top of the screen obviously are the most valuable guys, so this gives you a bit of a ranking. You can clear that out with these little X things here. Same thing here if you want to do that. This gives you the 5-year rating trend. So the rating is essentially, these are all the percentiles that player has. You average those out and that equals the rating. And then this tracks the rating over the last couple of years. Bowen Byram is the player that's being featured here. He only has 3 seasons of data. You get the injury risk. So what this is a 5-year games played percentile. So how many of that team's games over the last 5 years has this player played in? 35%. He obviously missed an entire season and didn't necessarily come back fully healthy from that either. So he's definitely an injury risk. And you can look at what that means down here. So most players play close to 82 games or in this range. If you're getting a guy who's 70, 80% in this range, they're a little bit of an injury risk. Once you get down into this range, you're looking at a serious injury risk. So this gives you a sense of, is this guy risky for, just not being in the lineup for my team for fantasy? Then you also get these percentiles here: point per game, goal per game, assists, shots, power play, hits, and blocks. You get the per game averages up here. Reason why I do per game, it gives you a sense of, if they do miss time, you're still getting a sense of what the player actually looks like. If you look at just the raw numbers, if the player misses time, then how do you have a barometer of each player? Guy misses 35 games. How do you compare that player to a guy who played the whole season? Well, you do it by per game averages. You can kind of get a better sense of what they're doing. When you factor in the injury risk, that gives you a better, more complete picture. When you factor in what they've done over the last couple of seasons, that does as well. Just as an example, and I've wanted to show you guys this for a while, and I haven't had a reason to, I'm going to show you one player that I've had my eye on all offseason because I saw his 5-year trend. I'm going to type in the whole name. You can do partial name or whatever. Just type it in. Joel Eriksson-Ek. Look at his trend line: 43, 62, 70, 78, 82. Every year he's getting better and better and better and more complete. Not that high of an injury risk. Shot volume is through the roof, 3.17 shots per game. Really good on the power play now. He might not have been getting that time earlier in his career. 1.53 hits per game, 0.71 blocks per game. So really complete, covering everything. Top 6 in Minnesota. So this is going to give you a better sense. Positional rank, 7th highest rated, most complete center. What these ratings are is a measure of completeness. It's not going to give you, you know who the best players in the league are. You know that, Connor McDavid's a 1.9 point per game guy, 160 point guy or whatever, but how complete is he? Well, he's the 9th most complete player. Just showing you why he's not the number 1 ranked player here. just because obviously some of you are going to look at this and say, why is Austin Matthews and why are some of these guys, why is Chris Letang better than Connor McDavid? Well, he's 100th percentile in everything except hits and blocks. So I'm in a league that has that, which is why I designed it this way. Obviously, I've had some requests to get some dynamic filtering for whatever your categories are. That's going to be way more intensive. I simply don't have the time to dedicate to completely redesigning this and changing everything before the draft season. So this is going to get you close. It's going to get you close enough to give you more information to make your decisions off of. And this is, look at his rating trend. So, last year was the best year of his career, obviously. But over the, that's his ceiling. He's done that before. So, you get a better sense of the player. You can have access to just this. Obviously, you get the goalie hub as well. You get whatever the visualizations and the hubs that I offer. That's $3 a month. And then for $5 a month, you get this and you get access to the Discord server. But that's going to do it for this video. Thank you for watching. I want to thank all of you for, liking the videos, commenting, subscribing, etc. I've been seeing a lot more movement in that over the past couple weeks. So thank you very much. And as always,